Up, we have Mo Dong leading the Celer project. Celer is actually another team that's been working rigorously through the bear market. And so they were focusing on state channels. They also, created a really revolutionary state guardian network. And what I most remember Celer for is the Gomoku game that you guys did that got a lot of traction. So welcome, Mo.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invite. And it's great to be here. So today, I guess I will just first share my screen here and talk about some of the new things that we're working on. Let me just see if this works. All right. All right. As Eva had pointed out, we are a scaling platform, and we started out with state channel solution. And we actually are the first one launching on Ethereum mainnet with generalized state channel. And the generalized state channel side of things are running very smooth right now. The initial Gomoku game right now has evolved into a whole platform called CelerX gaming platform. And the games built on top of that is processing payments using state channel, and now has approaching 1 million users in the US market, actually. But most recently, we're also kind of looking at different kind of scaling technology. And we always see layer 2 scaling as a holistic landscape that we need to have combine different kind of technology pieces together to offer a holistic view for the market and for the developers. So this is one of the motivations that leads to the things that I'm going to talk about today, which is Layer2.finance. And what this really is the DeFi cities public transportation system. And I'll get into how that is the case. Well, we all know DeFi is awesome. Basically, this summarizes it all. The most stable and safe DeFi protocol provide 10 to 50% of APY. And if you want to go to a little bit degen world, it's really no upper bound on this. While we look at the entire traditional financial world, set along banks, traditional banks, even if we talk about fintech banks, neobanks, challenger banks, these guys are always 50 times, 100 times away from the kind of yield that can be offered by the DeFi space. What this tells us is that this huge amount of a difference between the kind of yield, we should see a huge influx of demand and exponential growth of user numbers. Well, not so much. So these are the data we pulled from Dong Analytics, and what the graph is telling us is that after the last DeFi summer, that we are seeing a very booming trend for the entire DeFi space. The entire DeFi growth, the key protocols on them, I'm just showing some of that, is actually slowing down. This graph, the y-axis here is a day-by-day user growth new address thing, and the x-axis here is actually the time. So you can see that after the huge spike around the last summer, everything started to quiet down a little bit. And another interesting way to look at this is that we look at the total amount of the daily active user for the entire DeFi space. This is also data we pulled from Dong Analytics. And so basically based on on-chain data, we're seeing about 40,000 daily active user in this entire DeFi space. Okay, so we have 40,000 other DAU in the entire DeFi world. What does this mean exactly? Okay, so it basically means a US Apple App Store based app. I'm just talking about the US market, and it ranked about 500th in casual game category, which is one example is a cut roll. This particular game's the daily active user exceed the total daily active user of the entire DeFi world. So DeFi is still small and it is not exponentially growing. It begs the question of why. Really, why that is the case? It just doesn't make sense. So one way to kind of look at this problem is to really visualize the DeFi landscape as a city, right? So you have your home, which is your MetaMask wallet, and then you have all these shops, which is DeFi protocol you can park your money on at and kind of earn reward. Now, the problem happens at the point where you want to travel from your home to these shops to actually drop off your money. And the problem about this particular city is that this particular city only have one type of transportation system, which is the expensive limo service, super expensive, highly expensive taxi. This works fine for Alice, who has $1 million to play with. So Alex goes, to a shop called Compound, which is offering 10% annualized gain, paying about $250 for the limo fee. And what's going to happen is that, after 1 day sitting in this particular protocol with $1 million minus that limo fee, she can turn into profit in just day 1. Now let's look at a different scenario. Who is Bob? We're early majority. He wants to try this out, but only have like $1,000, $2,000 to just try the water and test out what's this DeFi all about to actually get hands dirty. So same thing, but just as the limo fee is fixed, no matter how much money you're actually taking to these shops. And what's going to happen to Bob is that even after 1 year, Bob still lost $175 after parking his money to Compound while paying that super expensive limo fee. Now we probably all know that what this limo fee is referring to is basically the layer 1 transaction fee we need to pay in these these days, to interact with these kind of protocols. Now, this is why we believe that DeFi hasn't really started to grow exponentially, because for many of the early majority adopters in the space, it is actually very hard to get the promised APY while eating all this kind of upfront gas fee cost and the kind of learning frictions of using DeFi. So, any kind of a reasonable city designer and city planner would at this point say that, hey, this totally doesn't make sense. We should have like a public transportation system in this entire city where people can just gather around and take the train all together and split the vehicle cost or split the gas cost of this entire train. And everyone will pay like $1 instead of $250 limo fee. Well, this is exactly what Layer2.finance is trying to do. Layer2.finance is trying to build a Layer 2 rollup system that essentially act as another layer on top of the existing DeFi landscape without actually asking the DeFi protocols to move to a different layer, but just adding another layer of liquidity on top of that to allow users to use DeFi system as if they're taking a public transportation system in the DeFi world. So this is what Layer2.finance looks like. Let's walk through a very simple user flow here. And it's right now live on Robston. This is actually the new UI we're launching in mainnet next week. So in this particular UI, the first step is really just move users fund from layer 1 to layer 2. Well, using the same kind of a subway analogy, you're basically buying a subway ticket this time. Like you're entering this entire layer 2 space. And then the next step is among all these protocols that you see, like basically we're actually aggregating all these protocols together, like a Compound, Yearn, Alpha, Ape, and all these other future protocols and strategies that user can express their intent to actually put their money in. So user can actually click the deposit and specify a certain amount of fund to actually deposit in. And this is like they're now getting at a station to wait for a train to leave. Okay, so what actually happened under the hood is that they're sending a layer 2 transaction in this layer 2 rollup chain, indicating that, oh, I want to allocate my fund to Compound by how much. And what's happened after that is that they will have an aggregation pending phase where this rollup chain is essentially aggregating and waiting for a sufficient amount of users who are all going to Compound, basically having the same kind of intent. And then what's going to happen is that it's going to aggregate all these demands together and form a kind of a layer 1 call, basically layer 2 to layer 1 call in the form of kind of a commitment and saying that, hey, now let's allocate the fund pool in layer 1 to basically direct 3 users combined fund all going to Compound at once. And therefore, if we have like 100 users all wanting to go to Compound in this train, they will be able to split the cost by 100 times. So basically, everyone will get the cost reduced by 100 times. So this is like the basic idea of Layer2.finance and using rollup to solve the DeFi kind of a problem. And then after that, the user will be able to just directly get their gain on layer 2 while their fund is actually moved to that protocol. The good thing about this is that it doesn't cause any kind of liquidity fragmentation. So basically, we don't need to push different protocols into different chains. We're merely moving users and their liquidity in layer 2 and aggregate their demands in layer 2 and combine their demands back into layer 1 and allocate the entire pool of fund all together at once and split the single transaction cost instead of asking each and individual user to make one single layer 1 transaction cost all by themselves. So this is basically the kind of a high level idea of layer 2 finance. This is what we're building, and actually there's a live testnet running today, and we're also releasing a new mainnet with this new shiny UI next week. So the immediate question is, hey, wait. So this sounds like really something like I'm putting my money all together and someone seems to be managing it. So like, is it possible for the layer 2 or whatever the system you're calling it actually be malicious and actually take the money and just run? Well, that's a very, very legitimate question. The answer here is that no, really, because this is actually built as a in-house optimistic rollup solution right now. So, how the process works is that a user starts from layer 1, and they all have funds. The first step is, they will put their fund into a rollup fund pool smart contract, just like any rollup. They will just put the fund there, and then they're moved to layer 2, essentially. They have balances on this layer 2 finance rollup chain. And then they will specify their fund allocation intent, basically, to this layer 2 finance chain. So it's very critical to note that these type of fund allocation intent now becomes the transaction on this special layer 2. And what's going to happen then is that, see, for example, these 3 intents are all sharing the same kind of a strategy goal. And what's going to happen is that this rollup chain is going to, of course, post all the call data and state root. And very importantly, a fund allocation proposal. And in this case, it's basically telling the layer 1 fund pool contract and saying, hey, I can prove with the call data and state root that in combination, you should allocate $300 to this strategy 0, which is, let's say, compound. And then there will be a challenge period passed. And what's going to happen is that the fund allocation confirmation will happen, and the fund pool will actually allocate fund into the corresponding strategy adapter. And then the strategy adapter themselves will actually interact with DeFi protocols to actually allocate fund to the DeFi protocols. It's essentially kind of a combining many users' fund allocation strategies and the transaction into one. So this is how this is done. Now, an immediate question would be, okay, does this actually cause a lot of kind of a delay in the sense? Well, not so much. There, of course, will be the aggregation delay, but the challenge delay is definitely not going to be something like multi-weeks. It's actually going to be in the hours. The reason for that is that the rollup state in this particular rollup is so much simpler, because it's not an arbitrary EVM. It's just like a kind of you can think of this as kind of pretty simple ledger. That is, I'm putting my money into which protocol or which strategy. And the type of transaction is also pretty simple. So it's very easy to verify. It's very easy to catch any kind of malicious intent. It's extremely cheap to challenge in the case of any kind of a malicious attempt. So let's talk a little bit more about the strategy side. The strategy can be very simple, direct the wrapper to the existing strategies like compound, where we basically wrap the compound with the auto harvest of the liquidity mining token, comp token function. And Curve and the Maker and all these other protocols can be very simply wrapped around. And what can also be done is we provide this thing called Layer2.finance strategy SDK to allow users to basically develop a strategy as long as it's conforming to a certain interface that is connecting to the fund pool. It can be plugged into this Layer2.finance system dynamically. What this means is that you can create a strategy, for example, put ETH into Maker and lend out DAI at compound and the earning interest rate. And we can combine multiple kind of strategies all together. That's all perfectly fine. The good thing about this is that you can really start to expand the complexity of the underlying strategy while maintaining an extremely simple user interface for the user to use. So in a way, Layer2.finance become a very nice to use and easy to use aggregator. And at the same time, it avoid any kind of, the key challenge people face in today's layer 1 aggregator, where, in today's layer 1 aggregator, people are actually paying higher fee because this additional layer is actually causing higher amount of fee. But like actually in the Layer2.finance, the retention of user using this aggregator is going to be pretty strong, because they really will be better off using Layer2.finance, and at the same time, in terms of like a transaction fee is also much lower comparing to directly using Layer 1. So for that, we are offering $705,000 to as prices to build using Layer2.finance strategy SDK, with 2 prices, $3,000 to the best Layer2.finance strategy, and $1,005 each for 3 runner-ups. And we hope to see the community start to build some very cool strategies and connect them to Layer2.finance and allow more users to use Layer2.finance. And you can always find us at ETHGlobal Discord space, and you can follow us at Stellar Networks Twitter, and we have pinned the tutorial video on our Twitter, and all the relevant code and documentation can be found in our GitHub. So, we're basically trying to build a DeFi public transportation system, so to allow everyone to be able to easily access DeFi. So yeah, that's all from us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mo. And it looks like we have a few minutes for questions, if you don't mind sticking around.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely stick around.
Cool. The first question I have for you is, you've been on this journey for a while, as you see, Gomoku into a gaming platform, starting from state channels to where you are today. What has been the biggest learning for you, as a researcher, in how you've seen L2 scaling solutions evolve?
Yeah, I think the biggest learning is that it's always a trade-off game, and it's basically defining and finding out what is the right trade-off to choose. In the early days, like if you think back, like in the plasma days, people were thinking we can achieve this kind of a quadratic scaling by cascading plasma layers, like a 1 layer on top of 1 layer 2 and another layer 2, and then along the way, people quickly find out that the trade-off doesn't actually pay off while we kind of continue to cascade. And I think the biggest learning for us is that there are different kind of application scenarios suitable for different kind of underlying scaling solutions. And our goal is still very much the same as we first started out, which is like trying to combine different technology pieces together into a holistic platform and a holistic application to offer to the end users and bring more kind of end user to the platform. Yeah.
Got it. And how are you guys thinking about the future? So we've got quite a few layer 2 options, and my personal view is that every dApp, every layer 1 chain, they'll choose the solution that makes most sense for their use cases. But as we also expand to ETH2, how are you guys thinking about Celer's role in scaling Ethereum?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, there are a couple of different pieces, right? So like, while we're moving into this multi-chain world, Celer also have this, our state channel solution is easily extended to something called C-Bridge, which is able to bridge different kind of chains from layer 2, layer 1, and all that stuff. So, we're launching pretty soon with all the other layer 2 solutions together, and it will be something pretty interesting that everyone actually can participate and provide liquidity for the liquidity bridging between different chains. It's kind of almost like a liquidity pooling, which is pretty cool. And for the roll up perspective, right? So like there are really 2 kind of a stream that is going on. One is that let's build a separate chain and move every application possible to that chain. And what's going to end up very soon, towards the end of this year, is that we'll end up with almost a sharded Ethereum, basically you have like multiple kind of roll-ups that is spinning up. It's good for scalability, but really horrible for UI UX, especially for new beginners. Like they will have a hard time in terms of figuring out where to send the fund to, and the ecosystem also need to catch up a lot. Like the Ethereum, each exchanges need to be able to figure out how do they connect to different kind of Ethereum. Does the layer 2 Ethereum actually have the same price as the underlying Ethereum? Because there's always this kind of inherent friction there, and these kind of questions will actually create increasing kind of usability hurdles. And our approach here is that, instead of taking this view, we kind of trying to take a unifying view, but like basically helping all these layers and all these kind of different chains be able to aggregate together all of their application, application together and into a unified interface for the users and into a unified pool of liquidity for the users. So from a user's perspective, they don't really care like where they're traveling. As long as they're in this kind of DeFi subway system, they can kind of travel intercity or kind of across different city, basically. Yeah.
I really like that analogy of like traveling between cities, and each layer, 2 or smart contract is its own little village. Maybe one last question, and this one can be sort of a prediction. So, it's very clear that DeFi needs layer 2, as we can see through gas prices and just, massive adoption. What use case do you think will be next for really needing layer 2 to solve the UX and getting more users onboarded?
Yeah, so I honestly think that we are still like just scratching the surface on the decentralized finance and open finance space, and I'm seeing a lot of the exciting things popping up, like with very exciting new DAX kind of design and things like that. And what layer 2 is going to enable is it's just like 4G enabled the TikTok, basically. Like you couldn't have TikTok in 3G networks, in 3G mobile networks, and with kind of this layer 2 capability, the capacity is going to be quickly filled in layer 2, and with new type of applications that couldn't be built with the existing layer 1 capacities and costs, basically. So yeah, and I think there are a very large class of open finance applications that can be built and couldn't be built today because of this kind of a high gas cost. And I'm really just looking forward to that. And aside from that, I'm looking at various different things, but like I haven't found out that it's something that is extremely interesting, except for several very interesting experiments going on with some kind of a social tokens and social interactions and kind of a self-organizing stuff, which is kind of dated back to even in the DAO time, right? So like it's still social coordination, but like I'm very interested in kind of how some of these experiments is going to go.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys also support a lot of these apps that are coming to fruition.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys so much.